Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. Alana's joining us. Thank you so much. Now, today's topic is going to be continuing on from yesterday's topic. And while I get all this out, I want to make sure everybody else out there is liking the show, subscribing to the channel, hitting the notification bell, that we get your email every day that we go live, which is, of course, every day. Now, we have quite the conversation this week. We're talking about what makes us who we are, what makes us all these things. Yesterday we talked about titles, but before we get into what we're going to get into today, Alana, why don't you give us a little 30-second, 45-second who you are, where you come from, and all that good stuff.
Wow, just 30 seconds. Yeah, I live in California, but I'm from Scotland. I am an author of 5 books, a mother of 3 children, wife of Dean Stott, who was your previous guest, I believe last week or the week before.
Mhm.
I run a security company, and I've wore a few titles over the years for sure. Mrs. Scotland. I have an MBE. Again, mother and wife's probably my first one. So.
Hmm. There were a number of titles, and I'm looking forward to getting your thoughts on all of these things in 1 second. So we'll get the conversation started with a quick little blurb and a definition. And I was listening to this a little bit earlier. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Hercules, the Disney one. I'm sure with kids, you guys have seen it many times. Um, but there's a song in it called "Go the Distance," and the first verse I just really love because it kind of goes into what we're talking about. And it goes like this: I have often dreamed of a far off place where a great warm welcome will be waiting for me, where the crowds will cheer when they see my face, and a voice keeps saying, "This is where I'm meant to be." And I think that's a very interesting intro because when I was looking up fulfillment and filling the void and all the things that we're going to be talking about today, what I got was this little synopsis. Fulfillment comes from witnessing your own growth. When you're able to hit the pause button and reflect on the substantial changes in your life, you feel a sense of meaning and purpose. Practicing gratitude for these changes propels you uh, with the motivation to continue striving for success and makes all of your sacrifices worthwhile. And the reason I bring up both of those was because in the song, there's this desire to be a part of something, desire to be a piece of something larger. And I think finding fulfillment comes from that same concept of witnessing yourself actually engaging in that process. So let's go around the room. Let's talk about what your first thoughts are on terms of fulfillment, finding fulfillment, and then we'll get into filling the void. Alana, let's start with you. What do you got?
Yeah, interesting. I'm assuming you might have read the Man's Search for Meaning book, and I think on that it talks a lot about purpose, and that really made me reflect on purpose. I remember when my mum passed away when she was 37, and she always said to me, "Just be happy," and I was always like, "What is happy though? How do we find happiness?" And I think that for many years you search to fill that kind of empty gap that's missing, and I feel like I found my purpose in helping other people. And I found that for every single time that I would go out and do something that was just to help someone else, I felt that kind of bucket was filling up a little bit more. So I think for me, when it comes to filling the void, if I ever feel a sense of emptiness or the feeling that things are too much, my simple solution is to just go and help somebody completely randomly, and it works.
Mm, I like that. Seb, you got some thoughts?
For sure. We're going to go down the philosophical drain today, I think, which is good. Um, was it Friedrich Nietzsche who said, "He who has a why can bear almost any how"?
Hmm.
And I truly believe in that. I believe that the sense of purpose and a sense of meaning is required. Meaning, in my opinion, is a mission statement which is achievable, whereas happiness. So what happens if you set yourself a mission statement and you don't get to the mission statement, or you feel like the mission is already failed? So for example, if somebody seeks happiness and they lose a kid, for example, so now what? Have they failed the mission? So my search has moved from happiness to meaning, in line with what Alana just mentioned. when you anchor your yourself and your sense of self-worth and your sense of purpose into meaning, you can essentially take meaning out of any bad situation that comes in, adversity included. But if you are seeking happiness and you fail your mission, then it goes down quickly into some sort of rabbit hole where you can self-consume. And so initially, my initial thoughts are exactly that. Meaning is beyond important. It's necessary. It has to be. If you don't have that, you can try to fill that internal void with all kinds of external things, but you can't fix internal problems with external solutions. They can help, provided that you make the initial step of doing the internal work and reach out for external help. That's a different story, but those are my initial thoughts.
Sean, how about yourself?
Yeah. So Alana had mentioned her mother saying, just go out and be happy, or go find some happiness. I've heard that myself many, many, many times as a young man, or even as an older man. But this morning, what I did was I wrote my IG post, my Instagram post, before I came on here. In fact, I had to reach out to Chance and say, what are we covering this week? And by the way, what is today's topic? Because I have zero idea. I am so unclear. And so once we got that cleared up, then I wrote my Instagram story this morning, which was, I revolved my post around fulfillment in respect to what we're going to be talking about today, which is filling the void, which is, a great word when you look at the root or the origin of the Old English word fulfillment. I'll paraphrase it, and it's like filling your void, really. You're filling yourself, getting a sense of fulfillment. And fulfillment, in my opinion, is different than happiness. So as I categorized it, I think happiness, or when someone says to me, just go be happy. Happy is an ephemeral state where it might be fleetingly only a few seconds, or it could be a few minutes, but it's fleeting. It is not permanent. It is ephemeral. It is time constricted in nature. It will last a brief moment, we'll call it, in the grand scheme of things. So you can be happy. You can be happy 100 times today, but they're all ephemeral states. Fulfillment has more heft, has more weight to it. It sticks around. It's there for months or years. And so I'm delineating between happy and fulfillment because I think they're two radically different things. However, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that happiness doesn't create fulfillment. You can stack happiness on top of each other, and even though it's ephemeral and it's fleeting and it's slipping by, happy stacking can create a starting point for fulfillment. But you have to pursue fulfillment to get heft, and that requires purpose. That requires a higher calling for yourself than just seeking a new dopamine hit, a new ice cream moment, a new Candy Crush game, get a new car, wash my car, vacuum the car. These little happy dopamine hits are not fulfillment. That's where I'd like to start for my opening statement.
That's a great one. Alana, you got some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was thinking about the one thing that we talk about quite a lot is the kind of identity crisis that a lot of military guys definitely go through. But for as a woman, I would address the motherhood side of it. Is often we can. For me, I was a business person when I first became a mom, and then this whole identity kind of shuffled round in me. But the one thing that I was really passionate about was making sure that I kept my own purposes throughout everything that I was doing. I know a lot of women that kind of give up everything to go into motherhood or go into their space, and then they end up filling that kind of void that they've got from that previous identity again with either stuff or filling the diary with sports, or filling their day with like mundane things that aren't really filling who they were. It's more filling just to fill. And eventually, when it's kind of that stuff that's unimportant, that's mundane, that's not really working for them, it's working for other people maybe, but not for them. eventually you're going to find that it is completely empty. And that when you get to a stage that maybe the kids have all grown up and there's no one there anymore, that you've actually got nothing in that space for yourself. I know for me, I wake up every day with a completely full to-do list, and I've got if that ever became an issue for me, I would stop that. But I know that I need to make sure that although I'll have the list full of things for the kids, for Dean, for the household, that there's always things on that list that are centered around me and me fulfilling my purpose and my passions.
I like that a lot. Seb, you got any points? You're nodding like a madman.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible inject, and it's a very good analogy, or a very good analogy to exemplify this would be putting your oxygen mask first before you can help anybody else. And I think people forget that. They want to give all of them to, especially in parenting, for example, giving all of them to the kids, and they literally, they're not second, third, or fourth in line. They're way down the pack, and eventually they lose themselves. And I think most parents have done that at some point until they learn to recalibrate, and generally that's called having a second child. But yeah.
Kind of, yeah. Sean, you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I do. And it's relevant to my phase of life right now. Our oldest son this week is going to bounce off to Kelowna, which for Alana, that's about 4 countries away from from England, if we were talking about distances, as we were quickly chatting about in the green room. So we're going to be dropping him off for his second year of engineering at university. And our youngest son today has just hopped on the bus to drive an hour to go off to his new life every day, which is becoming possibly a doctor. He's in a rural pre-medicine program for 3 years. And so both of our boys are now kind of starting to leave the nest. And if as a dad, my entire world was wrapped around my boys and they were the only reason for my existence, then as they leave the nest, what does that leave me with? I'm lacking fulfillment. The moment that my fulfillment, which was kind of more happiness to some degree, and fulfillment, of course, as it steps out of my life to some degree, that's leaving a void, which is my responsibility to fill. Or, more correctly, I don't care for ambushes. So I try to get in front of them, which means full well knowing that our boys are going to be leaving the household in the very immediate future. I've started stacking up something in front of me that's going to give me a sense of purpose, a sense of mission, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of helping others, a sense of doing it for the larger team around me. Henceforth, we now have a thing called The Collective, this podcast, which, we can sink our teeth into, as it were. So fulfillment, I think, it shouldn't be an ambush, would be my point. You can see what's coming down the pipe in the sense of the big landmark moments in our lives. And that's not to be confused with, the little moments that show up and they turn into happy moments or sad moments. I'm talking about the big phases of life. Kids growing up, kids leaving, kids etc.ing. All of these things are fairly predictable. And it's our job not to treat all of these predictable moments like an ambush. And then it's our job to get in front of them and start creating a new sense of purpose in anticipation of perhaps a little void being entering into our lives, as it were.
This is, I want to get into this here in a second. I just want to remind everybody, if you have any thoughts or questions, by all means, put them up in the comment section and we will discuss them. We got one right here. Winterstorm says, the goal is not to reach the finish line and collapse on it. You need to keep some in reserve for yourself. And this is an interesting line too, because we've talked about previously, using everything in your life so that when you come to the end of your life, you can collapse on the finish line in that you are fully spent. But this is still a great point. Alana, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that when my husband, when he was cycling the Pan America Highway and we were at home, I just had a baby, I had an older child, we had the businesses, I was running the campaign, and I was literally, we were working around the clock. So I was all day with the normal life then in Dean's time and then with the baby, and then it just coming around. And I would literally go days on end without sleeping. And in that whole process, everything was about kind of everybody else in it as a whole, even though we had that purpose of, you know, raising this money for charity, of Dean breaking these records, of doing these things. I was getting myself into the, you know, collapsing at the finish line mode. And I had to check myself. And it was actually friends that checked me. That was friends that came in and said, Alana, you're completely burning yourself out. You need to take a step back. And it's really difficult, I think, at that point to be able to take that step back when you are holding that weight of the world on your shoulders. And you know that if you're being that person that, right, well, if I'm not doing this, then Dean can't do this, the kids can't do this, the kids can't do this. And I guess it comes back to the putting on your own oxygen mask. I had to take that moment and say, right, I need to take today just to kind of recover and replenish myself and get my head back into it. And that was friends that done that. So I think that's an important part, is to make sure sometimes you won't always know that you are burning yourself out. You need other people around you to kind of be like, right, it's time to stop.
I like that a lot. Good to have friends for sure. What do you think?
I wouldn't know what that feels like. I really like that, the you know, the preemptive approach to making sure that we keep our own selves at play during any time of hardship where we have to be invested in other things. And we are far better at reacting, but it's not nearly as it doesn't work the same way. Being reactive to a certain problem or certain issue where emotions are engaged and everything is magnified, so to speak, is not the best time to do it. Whereas if this is a determination that is done preemptively, I must continue to care for myself as I engage in these activities or engage in helping others, and what are some of my mechanisms to make that happen, and how often do I implement them, and am I, you know, making sure to do something for myself daily, something that fulfills me, something that recharges the batteries, whether it's connecting with nature or having conversations or whatever the case may be, whatever it is for you as an individual. But as soon as we find ourselves where we have crossed that line, it's really hard to go backwards. And that's an important piece to keep in mind. I must address my wellness before I have wellness issues.
I like it. Sean, thoughts?
Yeah. As I was listening to Alana, I was thinking, yeah, been there, done that. Except I was the cyclist, because I was training to compete at a world championship level in 24-hour solo mountain bike races for a few years. And my wife is an extremely busy professional engineer, successful. There's not enough hours in the day for her to do all of the work that she needs to do. And so our boys were like 2 and 3 years old. When I wasn't changing a bajillion diapers, I was coaching athletes all over the world. And then I was, when the family was in bed, I was riding my bike for multiple hours each night. I get the no sleep thing for sure, but that doesn't make me work. That's not me working harder than Alana. That is me understanding what Alana is saying. Because once you're in the game of producing for others, for your family, for yourself, those three pillars, well, you can kind of get lost in the white noise of the velocity. Like, I'm used to a certain velocity, I'm comfortable with it. But if you're really comfortable in pushing the pace, sometimes pushing the pace becomes the task. And you got to step back and give yourself a little bit of a cold eye review to understand or shift your priorities in a sense of the three pillars: yourself, your family, and your other larger responsibilities around you, team or whatever. And so I think that for myself, I didn't have a coach to tell me that, but I had friends. As I was coaching, telling other friends or telling other athletes what they should be doing, I didn't have a coach to tell me that. And so if I start to lose perspective in my velocity, I almost demand my friends to give me a quick pattern interrupt with, hey, Sean, you're starting to burn all the candles at all the ends. So, just to dial it back a touch, because it's my way. I get myself in trouble sometimes just because I like to push the pace. But without a coach, you're reliant on either your spouse or friends who have a much clearer perspective from an external point of view. And so that's what I would like to say to anyone out there. For me, the goal is not the finish line, because the finish line doesn't exist. I'll collapse where I collapse, and the finish line will still be on the other end of the horizon. And I don't know what's on the other side of that horizon that I'm still pursuing. And so when I hit the deck, hopefully it was through the help of my friends throughout the years to keep on telling me, just keep pushing. Oh, slow down your push. Keep pushing. Slow down the push.
I like that a lot. Now, I want to get into kind of what the void is, because I think it could be different for a lot of us. But before we go into that, are there any other thoughts before I jump into that? Alana, everybody good? Okay. So it's interesting because I find the concept of the void to be, it's difficult to kind of construe. It's almost, it's a void, right? It's hard to get across and tell somebody else of, I have this feeling deep inside me that I need to do something, but I don't know what that is. And I don't know how to describe it, and I don't know how to do these things. So I wanted to just kind of go around and what was the thing in your own mind, I guess, that made you recognize that there was something missing, and then going after it as a side note, but on top of that. But let's talk about the void itself. Alana, where did that come in for you, where you were like, I need to do something more?
I never stopped chasing. I guess from like a really young age, from my teens, I was always chasing something else. There was never this is my kind of cut off point. I just kept going and kept growing through everything. And I guess I was living a life that I didn't really know. After when Mum died at such a young age, it was always like, right, okay, I've got to live this life to the max that I can do. And then when I was with Dean, and Dean was injured in a parachuting accident, I did then put like a lot of focus into his rehabilitation and getting him back into the game. And then I think without really noticing it, I started to lose so much of myself. And then when I had my first baby, it was, well, we've got this baby, we've got Dean. And I remember when she was about 11 months old, just looking out into the ocean and thinking, who am I? What am I doing? What is going on? And I tried to fill it with all sorts of different things that weren't really pulling my purpose, I guess. I was doing things that weren't really in my direction. It was in other people's direction. So I think I've done everything to try and fill the void. I entered a beauty pageant, for goodness sake, which was completely like alien to anything that I've ever done. So, but I would never say that I regret any of the things that I've done, because every little thing has almost become this little added extra into the bucket until I got to, and when did I really say, well, no, this isn't just filling a void anymore, I'm doing it? I probably would say in the last sort of 5 years, I've really felt like every day I'm waking up saying, no, like I'm living my purpose now. This is what I'm meant to be doing. But I would say that the only time that the filling of the void has been a negative impact is when it's been materialistic. I think anything that is in that avenue is not going to fill it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Seb, what do you got?
Yeah, an external fix to an internal problem, right? It's just, and people do it with drugs. They do it, like we use all kinds of tools. We do it with fake relationship. We do it with going out and partying, all those things, in an attempt to not have to look at the mirror. There's something called the call of the void. It's kind of a controversial psychological concept where people that are afraid of heights will sometimes, when they're near the edge, will feel like they're being called to jump. And there's various theories as to why this is the case. But because most of the people that experience it very seriously are predominantly people that are afraid of heights, it seems to make sense that some of the theories relating to survivability and essentially for your body to say, if you're afraid of heights and I call your name near the edge, you will be so scared that you will move away from the edge, therefore increasing your survivability. And that's one of the theories that's floating out there, and it's, in my opinion, very reasonable on account of, if we assume that the people that are mostly afflicted by that are afraid of heights, then therefore it would make sense that their sort of mechanism in relation to height is stronger. And so to make a correlation between those two things, I see the void within, which is a feeling of emptiness, kind of the same. For me, it becomes the void that's calling, and it's that feeling of emptiness inside you, and what needs to be done. You can't just disregard it. You can't just keep teetering around the edge. You have to address the problem. And the problem is you need to be stepping away from the edge. In this case, the problem is addressing the things that are causing you to feel empty. It's your body's way or your mind's way of bringing you back to focus, to internally focus. And now what you are doing is that's very uncomfortable. So you start looking around for the things that are going to replace that internal focus. And you start reaching for, the drugs, the alcohol, the parties, the material possessions, or whatever the case may be, instead of really sitting back and looking in the mirror and going, okay, what is the problem here? And what is my body, my mind, my soul trying to tell me by making me feel this way? And start seeking internal solutions and not external solutions to those problems.
Sean, anything to add?
Yes, I do. So I was thinking about it this morning when I was writing my Instagram post in respect to fulfillment, for lack of a better term. And so in my mind, I created a story. I was writing, but as I was writing, there was another story brewing in my mind. And it was a vision, as it were. And it was too deep, too nuanced, too layered to be able to type it in 256 characters or whatever. And so I just bailed on the idea and I wrote what I wrote, and then I bypassed, and I thought, I'll probably never bring that up out into the general public because it's too complicated. But it's not that complicated now with this panel, based on what we've been talking about. And it was something that Alana said that triggered my ability to maybe explain what I was thinking this morning. So Alana, you'd said that you, and I'm going to use my own word now, you boldly stepped into a beauty pageant. Maybe a little out of character for you, maybe something that you'd never foreseen in the future, as it were. But you stepped into it boldly and you smashed, crushed, dominated, or whatever words you want to use to engage in that process. You didn't, I'm sure you didn't compete from the sidelines. You were probably engaged in the process. And so as I was thinking about that, really what we're talking about there is you adventuring into the unknown. More correctly, not just entering into the void as an adventurer, but adventuring into a void that you know a little bit about, that's already making you uncomfortable before you cross that start line called beauty pageant. And so the imagery that I've got in my mind right now is not Alana, but anyone out there, anyone who's listening, who is feeling that void within themselves, whether it's a soulful void, a psychological void, a physiological void. It doesn't matter what it is. We'll call it a void, a feeling. And if you have that, what to do about it? So grab a flashlight and go adventure in the dark, as it were, which is what Alana did. She went out and adventured into a beauty pageant. So she grabbed her flashlight, stepped out into the void, out into the dark, trying to find her way on a path that she didn't understand. And as she adventured out into that pitch black, she found herself up against a large circle of great depth that she couldn't see the bottom of. And as she stood on the edge and shone her flashlight down into that, to me that's like what happiness represents, the word happy. It's a fleeting moment. You know, when you shine your flashlight up against the wall of we'll call it a deep cave that goes 1,000 feet down. As you're shining your flashlight on the walls, it lights up the wall, but as you move your flashlight, it's gone. The light doesn't stay there. It flickers and wends its way down the hole, as it were. And nothing is permanent. Nothing is filling that hole. There's flashes of happy light, but nothing stays, nothing fills in there. Now, contrary to just a flashlight, you can take a match as an adventurer. You can step out with your flashlight and begin adventuring to try to figure out what the void is. And when you get to the very edge of your hole, when you realize what your void is, you can kind of put the flashlight away and grab a match, strike it, hold it up, light the hole a tiny bit, and then drop the match down into it. And if it stays ignited, it might reach the bottom of that hole and start a small fire that turns into a bonfire that now fills that void with light. And I think that's kind of the I don't know, the metaphor, I guess, that I'm trying to put across is the tools that we use to fill the void are up to us. The flashlight is the adventure. The match is the start. The bonfire is the outcome. The bonfire is what we're trying to create within the void to shed the darkness, encourage some light in our lives so that we can see the path forward for ourselves internally and externally. What do you think?
Dang. Just
Well, I'm just threading together what you guys are saying. That's
yeah.
all.
No, absolutely. Now I have a thought on that, but Alana, you got anything touch on that?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful metaphor. I really do. I think that it explains really well as to exactly why, I was kind of in a comfort zone. And even though my comfort zone was wilder than anybody else's, where I was at was a comfortable place. And stepping into the world of beauty pageant was completely alien to me, completely unlike anything I'd ever done before. And that's exactly why I done it. I wanted to come way, way, way beyond my comfort zone to see what it would be like. Now, yeah, I could talk about the whole experience of it, but the main thing that I did get from it was growth. And I think that's really important, that whenever you're stepping out of that zone and looking down that dark hole, as long as you are pulling something from it, as you say, if there's some sort of light there. For me, I went into this wanting to do a certain thing, and I met some amazing people who were already in this world. And what I didn't realize was that was their comfort zone. And when I came in, I opened them up to a new world. They were teaching me about the world of beauty and pageantry and everything, but I'm going in there saying, well, this is the world that I live in. This is the world that the philanthropy world, the human trafficking world, everything that I do. Would you like to learn? Step out of your comfort zone and come and join me a little bit here. And we were able to pool those two worlds together, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. Zeb, you got any touches on this?
Yeah, just quickly with the beautiful metaphor that Sean dropped the mic on, implementing the plan, and as Sean alluded to, that plan is very unlikely to be perfect. In fact, it's likely to be good to begin with. But going into exploration is much better than the alternative, which is staying where you are and not doing it. As you start moving things around, some things will start making sense to you, and you'll be able to light up the path, as it were. And so I think one of the problems with people sometimes, and I include, when I say people, I include myself, obviously everybody kind of can experience this, is that we are waiting for the perfect plan to make moves. But the perfect plans never come. The perfect plan, the plans are developed as you are engaging in the pursuit. And so the fix to anxiety is the exploration piece. So it not only does it help you light up the path, but it also resolves a lot of the anxiety associated with staying back and waiting for somebody else to step in to save you.
100%. It actually kind of goes into what I started this off with in that song. It says that they've dreamed of a far off place, right? Of where the crowds will cheer and all these things. And it's like not only, and I'm talking from my personal experience too, is that you seek the path to be laid out for you, right? Like, this is the way to go. Just go do this. Oh, okay, that makes more sense. And as we've been talking more about the void, what it actually reminded me of is a black hole, in that there is a pull. There is a constant gravitational pull towards this void of like, I have something. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to deal with it, but there's this pull. And we've been talking, I've been thinking about the accretion disk that goes around the black hole, which is light trying to escape the pull, right? And I think that a lot of society sits in that accretion disk. There is the void within them. They recognize it's there, but they're trying so hard to fight away from the unknown that they just get stuck in this orbit around it rather than actually engaging it, rather than diving into it or exploring it or anything like that. Just great analogies left, right, and center here. I'm loving this conversation.
I'd just like to push back a tiny bit just on the
Give it.
generalistic comment that you made, where you said most people, or I think a lot of people, or the general comment that they're trapped in this black hole. No one's trapped, and no one's in any spot or this spot or that spot. We're all where we're supposed to be based on the efforts that we make, based on our understanding of our lives, based on the work that we put into ourselves, based on blah, blah, blah. And so no one's trapped in anything. No one's stuck in a black hole or on the edge of a black hole or, on planet Earth looking at black holes. We're all where we're supposed to be based on what we do on the daily, on our efforts to fight gravity, for lack of a better term. And so I think that how a person could maybe get trapped in that black hole and never be able to get out of it, which I disagree with totally, but let's pretend for a moment we're all now trapped in a black hole and we can't get out. One of the first signs that you're in a black hole and you're stuck, for me anyway, and people that I talk to, is if I'm getting freaking bored. If I'm bored, then I'm in a black hole. And I like to, when I get that feeling of boredom, I'm now looking to adventure. I'm now looking to create a pattern interrupt. I'm now looking to put on my anti-gravity jetpack and shoot out of that black hole and go explore out into the galaxy, as it were. And so boredom, I think, is a early indicator of someone who needs to fill their void. And when boredom shows up, unfortunately, it is typically filled with happiness. And by happiness, I mean dopamine. And by dopamine, I mean grab your phone and start playing Candy Crush, you nerds.
Fun.
And so that's the problem. That's the problem. The moment that someone feels that early indicator of they've got a void within themselves now it's called boredom, there's quick fixes all over. I could grab eight or 10 quick fixes right now to get rid of that sense of boredom, but none of them are deeply considered. None of them are wisdom-based. None of them are heft that will stick around. Candy Crush is ephemeral. But looking forward into a 10-year project, I'll look at Alana right now and think Alana's maybe lifelong project for the rest of her life is already kind of laid out in front of her. If she wants to engage in what she is already in for the rest of her life, it will be a righteous path forward. She won't be bored because she's got a sense of fulfillment, a sense of she is producing not just for herself in a way that makes her feel good, but she knows that what she's doing is greater than herself. Candy Crush is not greater than us. It is a dopamine hit. But if you can go out and identify something to get rid of that boredom feeling that serves others, you'll then be serving yourself and you'll start filling your void.
The greatness of Candy Crush. Derailed by Sean. Alana, you got any
I've never played
thoughts
it.
Got any thoughts on that, Alana?
Yeah, I would say that in addition to the boredom, because we find that we're then going and using these tools such as our phones and things to fill that boredom. I think that one of the, if you're asking yourself if you're suffering from that, is that, are you finding everything offensive? And what I mean is that I think for me that is a clear indication that somebody isn't fulfilling their purpose, that everything's offending them, like everything in the world's offending us now. I don't find anything offensive. There's not much you could ever say to me. I'm so busy. You could call me Alan and I would answer you because I'm just trying to do this thing and fulfill this purpose. Nothing really offends me. And I think that right now, because we are so bored and we're not fulfilling what we should be doing, so many people are just being offended by absolutely everything. And I feel that is a really good indication for that your void is clear and you're filling it with that daily 4, 5, 6, 10-hour checking of the phone and reading all these things that are telling you what to be offended by. And I think to address it, I think, what do you have to give and what are you actually doing? Those two things. and things like, are you spending your entire day on the phone? Are you spending your entire day cleaning the house? Or all these things that you're doing to fill that every single day? Is that what you have to give as a person? And I think most of us know what we have the ability to do and what we have. And yeah, we're still searching for that. And how do we put that into practice and how do we put that into play? But some people are just pushing that aside and not allowing it to be released and filling it with all this other crap and then getting offended by absolutely everything. So I think if we can really ask ourselves that question and then start taking it away. Well, actually, I'm a writer, but I'm not writing books because I have the house to clean. Well, tell you what, go and pay somebody to clean your house and write your book. As you say, there's no excuses. We're creating those excuses ourselves. We need to kind of adjust that and shift that in our own world.
Absolutely. Seb, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to push back on the pushback. I really liked your metaphor earlier. But I also get what Sean is saying. Nobody is trapped ultimately, and they may feel that way, but they're not. It's a decision, and we have to stop thinking that somehow we're a victim. And again, this all goes down to that victim mentality, and it ties right into what Alana just said. If you have that victim mentality, it allows you to start developing ways to virtue signal, which make you feel better about yourself, but you still haven't addressed the issues of you. And it's just distractions that you bring into your life to prevent you from doing the things that you ought to be doing to be the person that you ought to be. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Now I have a comment here from Eric, but any thoughts? Yeah.
Yes, I do. I need to play off of this based on what Seb and Alana have been saying. So I think an important distinction between filling the void or just candy crushing your way through life is, look, I'm thinking of Dean Stott right now, and Dean rode his bike for a long, long time, and that is we'll call it the delineation between happiness and fulfillment. I ride my bike most days, sometimes twice a day. When I'm out on my bike, there's moments out there where I'm freaking 11 out of 10 happy. And it might only be a few seconds when I nail a shredder move, when I go anti-gravity, when I go whatever. It doesn't matter what move I make, and I've been racing and riding bikes for over 25 years. There's moments out there that just 2 or 3 seconds for me are mega happy because it just feels right. It's synchronous with the universe. It feels like it was supposed to happen. Those are joyous moments for me. They're notable. And I only need 1 or 2 of those in a ride to feel like, that was a good ride. Pretty happy about that ride. It was acceptable. And so acceptable is, or happy, we'll call it, is ephemeral. I can't remember 10 rides ago because nothing in that ride 10 rides ago was so fulfilling that it is carved into my mind. Lots of happy moments. I can't recall them. I was just happy while I was out there. Fulfilling? Not really, because I can't recall them. And that's the difference between fulfillment and happiness. If Dean went out for an hour-long ride, he might get some happiness. But if he goes out and smashes a boatload of thousands of miles down the left coast of the continent, well, now he's working on fulfillment. Because fulfillment, I believe, takes consistent effort where there is some form of struggle over a long period of time where you get to sit with yourself and understand that this is not a fleeting moment. It is not an ephemeral moment. It is something where you get to study yourself day after day, week after week, maybe month after month, and get a better sense of the difference between, is this filling me? Or is this just me chasing little blips of happiness? Long-term projects, consistently executed against, will give you a better sense of fulfilled or happy.
Again, you know what? I think, Sean, you've ended the show 3 or 4 times now. It's been great to watch. You're on fire today. It's wicked. Alana, any thoughts on what Sean just said?
No, I'm going to let you read your comment now.
Okay, you're good. So, Seb, you're good? Okay, so Eric put this in a little while ago, and I just wanted to make sure we got this hit. Eric Lisher said, to Sean's point, trusted, detached perspectives from people who aren't afraid to challenge your ego make all the difference when your default is to push. Also, congratulations to Keegan and the family, which is
Nice.
great. But I love this line here at the bottom. People who aren't afraid to challenge your ego make all the difference. And whether your default is to push or not, but I think that those are the key people to have in your life. People who aren't afraid to challenge your ego make all the difference, at least in my mind. What do you think, Alana?
Yeah, that's the one thing that I'm with Dean is that I'm not his yes man. I'm his person who's giving him the answers, and they're not always the answers he wants to hear. And there's plenty of people that are going to be the person who are like, yeah, you're God, you're amazing, you'll do it. But mine's is that, and I think one specific that might go with you, Sean, is that when he was starting the bike ride, and he was on day one in Ushuaia, and he had certain people around him that were saying, no, we can't start this until everything is perfect. We didn't have some kit, some stuff hadn't arrived. We can't set off. And I was speaking to Dean from afar, and I was saying, look, are you ready? And he was like, yeah, but we're not sure of the guys. And I was like, right, get away from them, go on a ride away from them, and call me back when you're on your own. And then when he was on his own, I was like, can you do this? Do you actually need any of that stuff? Or can you do this for the next 7 days till we can get that stuff to you or whatever? And it was, yeah, you can. So I was like, right, forget what they're saying. It doesn't need to be perfect. The path ahead is there. The plan is going to survive. Let's just go for it now. Let's just get started, because I think if we listen to that little ego, that little noise that's telling us that everything has to be perfect before we can do everything, we're never getting started. Sometimes you've just got to take that plunge and go for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Seb, thoughts?
Yeah, it's the propensity is to listen to people, and it's interesting because you want to surround yourself with people that you can trust, and then when they sometimes say things, that perhaps are sort of a projection of their own insecurities, you need to be able to decide. You need to be able to look inward. So the way I kind of address criticism or suggestions or of my environment is to really sit with them and sort of break down what is eliciting a reaction in me. Is it the fact that they're right? Is it the fact that they're wrong? Is it the fact that, and just kind of break it down myself. And I have to look at the mission statement and what we're talking about here is mission execution. Things have changed. Things are dynamic. I need to be prepared for that. But if I can still engage in the mission, because really those things not being lined up is not relevant at this moment, because it's not going to come into play until later, then listening to the voice of reason, so to speak, or the person that's trying to make it perfect before they start, it doesn't work. It simply doesn't work, and I wouldn't want to do that whatsoever. So it's important when we're receiving input from, and this is even more important, it can be catastrophic if the people around you are not the right people, and they're suggesting and saying all kinds of things on account of their own flared up insecurities or whatever the case may be. And now you are looking at the decisions that you are making, and you're being held back by people that do not want to see you succeed. So in this case, clearly this wasn't, but it does happen quite on the regular. And so for me, having that, and it's an interesting concept that feeds right into detachment. Like, go away from them, stop listening to them. Let's have the real conversation. Can you do this? Yes or no? Yes. Stop overthinking it. Let's start moving.
I like that a lot. Sean?
Yeah, I think it comes down to how important a thing is. What's your conviction? That's typically a combination of passion and perseverance, but your commitment to the thing, your passion for the thing, your perseverance. And if you're standing on the start line at the southern part of the world, about to ride up to the north part of the world, it's at that point I'm sure Dean had the conviction. He just was allowing the white noise of the moment, all the voices around him perhaps, to not erode his conviction, but to muddy the signal, as that's how I like to think of it. My bandwidth is pretty good. I like my own personal bandwidth. If I'm standing on a start line and I'm committed to it, I have the conviction to it, it's freaking done in my mind. It's not a case of when does the race start? The race is already over in my mind. It's just I'm not sure what the outcome will look like. That's conviction. But a chunk of people stand half an inch back from the start line and never take that extra half inch to step onto the start line and engage because of all the white noise around them, all of the voices that are telling them, don't go to that beauty pageant. Don't blah, 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 whatever. And guess what? Sometimes in my past, I've listened to those voices and stepped back from whatever start line it was. Because that's what you got to do, man. In life, you got to learn. None of us here on this panel, I'll speak for myself anyway. I don't think any of us have made perfect decisions with perfect outcomes perfectly throughout our little perfect lives. We just haven't. That's called life. But life gets better once you start analyzing the failures and making better decisions. Life gets better once you stand on a start line, not a half inch back, and you commit to the process, tightening up your own bandwidth of perspective and conviction as to what your expected outcome is and why it's important to you. And rarely is it all about you. Mostly it's all about the team wrapped around you. So I'm sure as Dean stood on that start line hearing the white noise, whatever little white noise it was, he was probably feeling, because I know I felt this myself when I've flown overseas to race at World Championships. As I'm standing on that start line, I've done freaking everything I can to be prepared to become a world champion. But the extra little nudge for me is knowing that my team back in Canada, my family, had to deploy some resources, had to spend some money, are without their dad for a little while. And it's that sense of responsibility to the greater team around me, whether it's my family or my athletes or my business or the collective, as it were. It's that responsibility that pushes me harder, that will nudge me across the start line, even if I don't feel like I should cross the start line. And so for anyone who would have been in Dean's spot, Dean would have had the conviction, no doubt. He would have had the clear direction, no doubt, but he would have had the extra little nudge, I feel, from his home territory, feeling that he needs to execute against the resources that have been burned to put him to that point in time. What do you think, Alana?
Yeah, completely agree. And what I would say is that Dean has always got the ability to do whatever he puts his mind to. The issue there may have been that the people that were on the ground maybe didn't have, as it's been said here today, didn't have the same conviction and the same beliefs and the same drive as what he did. Now, nobody's expected to because the man's a machine. But if you put enough wrong voices around you, even with the toughest of guys and the most driven of guys, it can start to put that little doubt in your head. And I think for me, that being able to do it yourself is very, very important, and having all that skills and that ability, but putting that right team around you, because one, it can really help you. But if you've got that anyway, Dean's going to do it anyway. Dean will always do it. But if you put the wrong team around you, it could be so detrimental that, luckily for us, that didn't happen. But if those wrong voices are in your head in any sort of part of your life, anything that you're doing, and you've got the wrong people, and these can be family members, they can be friends, just the wrong voice that's constantly telling you. I mean, one of my books I wrote for kids is called Live Your Own Way. And it's just about, there's a little girl who's been told by everything that things are too dangerous, that she shouldn't be doing it, and in the end she decides to just go back and do it all and just live her own way. It's good to have friends that have got their way and things that scare them, but you shouldn't be limiting your own beliefs and abilities by what other people are saying and doing.
Yeah, 100%. Seb, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, people will willfully or not, or subconsciously sabotage you. Even if they're engaged in a process of helping you succeed, they may still subconsciously contribute to a sabotaging of your pursuit. And so, who's around you is beyond critical.
I just want to tie something into this too. And I mean, we've been talking a lot about, we've covered quite a lot. So I just wanted to tie this back into what we were talking about, or what I started this with. And it was this comment here: fulfillment comes from witnessing your own growth. And to Sean's point, it takes time to do that. You can't just look at yesterday or a previous BJJ match or a ride or whatever and say, oh, well, that was growth from yesterday. But it also comes in terms of finding, when you have the right circle around you, they're going to point those things out to you, right? And this is one of the things I noticed with Sean has done with this to me quite a bit in the last little while, is pushing me to look at my own growth through this collective forward, and continuing that statement from earlier. It says, when you're able to hit the pause button, reflect on the substantial changes in your life, you feel a sense of meaning and purpose. But again, that's always in the rearview mirror. It's when you're looking back on things, and the fulfillment comes, I find, in the doing of things, but not until you recognize afterwards that they've been done. And the group of friends, the people that surround you, if you have excellent people that are willing to challenge you, like the panel here, they push me to be better, and that pushes me to fulfill my purpose, fulfill my meaning. So I think that this is all it's been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate everything you guys have been saying. We're just about at time here, so I was going to get some final thoughts before we shut her down today, but I do really want to thank you, and thank the people commenting. Alana, you got any final thoughts on anything that we've covered so far today?
Yeah, I would just say one of the things that what Sean says about growth. One of the comments that we probably get most as a couple of me as an individual is, "You're so lucky," and I always say, well, if lucky is sleepless nights, sacrifice, time away from the family, months on end of not seeing each other, hard work, all these things, then yeah, maybe I am lucky. But really what we're saying is, we're putting in the work, and it's not just an overnight thing. It is day in, day out, month in, month out, year in, year out, all the time, consistency. So yeah, my least favorite word, lucky.
Yeah. We've actually had this conversation a couple of times on
Yep.
You're so talented, you're so lucky, you're so like just how to completely mitigate everybody else's work in one word. Seb, you got any final thoughts?
You got great genetics.
Great genetics, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And we started talking about this yesterday. If you keep yourself prepared, if you keep yourself, yes, opportunities will be created. And the question is, did you manifest them, or are they accidental? And the answer is, irrelevant. Are you ready to take on the challenge when it comes? And that is a critical part of that. I would say, if you're standing at home today and you're feeling, when we talk about inner emptiness, or we talk about feeling unfulfilled, and you are generally not knowing why you feel that way, you need to lock yourself somewhere. You need to lock yourself with the mirror and have the hard look at what you have done, what made you feel better, what made you feel a sense of fulfillment, or a sense of joy, even if it's fleeting. I don't care what makes you feel good, what makes you feel like you're contributing. And if you can't answer any of those questions, do not leave the house. It's that simple. Like you can't run away from it. You can't fill it and fill that process with a variety of completely frivolous endeavors that do not serve the purpose of making you better. And you're going to be looking down the line 6 months from now, feeling exactly the same, being exactly the same, if not worse, on account of life will not stop sending adversity your way. Life doesn't get easier, it gets harder. And so if you're going through life and you have that sense and you refuse to do the work, you are going to compound those issues to a point where it could be unrecoverable. And so do the work.
Do the work. I love it. Sean, final thoughts?
Yeah. So as the guests have said, if you're feeling it, and by feeling it I mean that sense of void within yourself, it's a feeling. You can't touch it. You can't hold it up in front of someone and show it to them. It's inside of you, but you feel it. And that cognitive dissonance of feeling it and not doing anything about it, that's erosive. And so day after day, that little dissonance, that little feeling that's not going away, it's corrosive. And so what to do about it? Stop ignoring it. Face whatever it is that you need to face. And that doesn't mean that you've got to face it that day with a 27 out of 10 rotary dial. You can set it to 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10. Whatever velocity you want to apply against that cognitive dissonance, that's for you to decide based on how comfortable you are facing what you need to think about, feel about, do about. But 2 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 is inconsequential. What is important is the action of facing it and doing something about it. Now you're on the road to fulfillment. It'll take a while. As I said, it's not a thing that you can achieve in half a day. But in half a day, you can start moving towards achieving fulfillment.
Yeah. I started this off with a quote from a song, and I'm going to finish this with a quote from the same song because I really enjoyed that. But it's one of the verses carries on from that song, and it says, "I am on my way. I can go the distance. I don't care how far. Somehow I'll be strong. I know every mile will be worth my while. I would go most anywhere to find where I belong." And I think this goes exactly into what we're talking about in filling the void. Be willing to go anywhere, to do anything, to explore any new thing or learn any new skill. That way you can build yourself into who you want to be so that you can grow into where you're supposed to be. And you do that with us every day here on The Collective. See y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
Chimo.